name is Ranger Matthew Hale, National Park Service, Shenandoah District 3. I have served 12 years on search and rescue rotation, specializing in child missing cases. Training and repetition build a strange calm. You learn to catalog the forest the way a medic reads a pulse. Each ridge a heartbeat, each stream a breath. On June 14th, I was assigned Incident Command for a Level 2 search near Skyline Drive, mile 42. The report was simple on paper: a 7-year-old boy named Ellie Morrison, last seen around 11:40 a.m. near the Hawksbill Gap overlook while his parents took photos. Paper never shows what the woods take. By noon, the parking lot filled with uniformed volunteers, local deputies, a K-9 handler, and a scattering of family friends wearing fluorescent vests. I remember the heat first. Sticky, the kind that makes radio mics sweat against your collar. The mother sat on the tailgate of a Ranger pickup, shaking so hard that her coffee sloshed across the cup's rim. The father kept saying he'd only turned for 01 picture. Half a minute. It's always half a minute. My job was to keep the search professional and fast before that half minute became permanent. The terrain around Hawksbill is mixed oak and hemlock, steep in places but threaded with game trails and old CCC fire roads. We ran initial containment, 6 rangers forming a perimeter grid within a 1-mile radius. I took the north-northeast sector, where the slope falls toward the Rose River drainage. Standard protocol: call name, pause 10 seconds, listen. Whistles every 5 minutes. Mark sign with orange flagging tape. Stay in voice contact with flankers. But even routines can turn strange when the forest decides to listen back. By 12:40, I'd moved roughly 400 yards downslope. The undergrowth thickened, sunlight shredding into green shards through the canopy. I kept my radio open to channel 2, the team frequency. Snippets of chatter came through. Negative on visual, K9 track cold past overlook, copy grid shift. Nothing unusual. I found a small scuff in the leaf litter near a rotted log. Toe drag facing downhill, size consistent with a child's sneaker. I flagged it and called coordinates to base. Command confirmed receipt, sent a secondary to verify. That's when I first noticed the quiet. Not silence exactly, but a flatness. No warblers, no breeze through hemlock needles, even the distant hum of Skyline Drive gone. It felt like sound had pressed itself thin. Every SAR veteran knows that moment, the forest holding its breath, and you start to wonder if it's you imagining it. At 1:15 p.m., the K9 handler radioed a possible scent path trending east. We realigned. I intersected their track about half a mile from the trailhead, near a stand of mountain laurel thick enough to scrape your shins raw. The dog, a female German shepherd named June, was alert but uncertain, ears twitching, nose low, tail down. The handler said the scent line broke and reappeared every 20 or 30 feet, like the kid had been carried or lifted intermittently. That's a pattern I hate. It usually means panic movement or human interference. I logged the new coordinates, marked time, and advised a shift to level 3, law enforcement support. That meant assuming abduction potential, even if no proof yet. The father objected, voice cracking through the radio. He wouldn't go with anyone. He's scared of strangers. Most parents say that too. We fanned out again, doubling sweep width. I took point east along an old service road choked by ferns. Sunlight blinked through cloud layers, turning everything a pale bronze. The heat built thick as syrup. Sweat stung my eyes. Somewhere to my right, I heard a single metallic clang, like rebar striking stone. I called for confirmation. No one else reported hearing it. Could have been old fencing. Could have been anything. But when I reached the source, all I found was a rusted survey stake bent at an odd angle, fresh scrape on its tip. I logged it, photographed, move on. At 2:05, dispatch relayed a new detail from the mother. Eli had been wearing a red UVA hoodie despite the heat, a souvenir from the park gift shop that morning. Red helps. You can pick it from green at distance, if the terrain doesn't swallow it first. By 2030, I hit a narrow ravine where the trail dipped toward a dry creek bed. Something about the pattern of prints there made my gut tighten. Adult boot marks overlapped older ranger tread from weeks ago. Nothing new, but one faint sneaker impression crossed perpendicular, half crushed by a boot heel pointing the wrong way up the slope. Whoever stepped there had walked toward the overlook again. I radioed command, flagged the site, and requested evidence bagging. Deputy Kerr responded he was 10 minutes out. I waited, watching gnats orbit the orange tape. The forest sound returned in waves. Distant woodpecker, trickle of runoff, wind stirring. It should have been comforting. Instead, it made me aware of how close everything was, how every trunk seemed leaned a few degrees too far inward. Kerr arrived sweating, his cruiser lights visible through trees like red ghosts. We documented the prints, photographed the surrounding area. He agreed the overlapping direction was strange. Could be your own track from earlier, he said, but the stride length didn't match mine, nor the tread pattern. He bagged soil samples anyway. We regrouped at command post by 30:15. The search radius had widened. 30 volunteers now combed the lower slopes. Helicopter support was grounded by afternoon haze. June, the K-9 began showing stress, panting hard, whining, refusing command sits. The handler requested rest. I approved and pulled him from rotation. Losing the dog early hurts, but a fatigued animal gives false trails. The next 2 hours blurred. I remember mapping zones with grease pencil across topo sheets, dispatching new flanker teams, tracking hydration logs. The parents' voices came through background chatter, brittle with disbelief. By 5 p.m., daylight angled long through the trees, and morale thinned with it. Then a call crackled, possible visual. Red clothing, Northridge near old fire tower base. Everything shifted. I grabbed my pack and sprinted up slope with 2 volunteers and Kerr trailing. The climb was brutal. Switchbacks littered with shale, gnats biting, sweat salt burning down my temples. My lungs clawed for air by the time the clearing opened. There, under a tilted fire tower foundation, lay a patch of red fabric snagged on brambles. It wasn't a hoodie, just a torn scrap, maybe 10 inches wide, faded and dirty, but the cotton weave matched the description. I noted the location, photographed with scale reference. No tracks nearby except ours. Kerr's flashlight beam swept over a half-buried soda can, a fragment of old rope, and what looked like ash from an ancient campfire. Could be old, he said. Could be nothing, maybe. But fresh tears along the cloth edge suggested it hadn't sat long. We canvassed outward in expanding arcs. Light faded to gray. The forest took on that evening hush where every sound carries twice the weight. At 6:40, a volunteer named Dana called my name softly. She was standing near a downed hemlock 20 yards off the slope. Beneath its roots, half hidden in the soil, was a small plastic dinosaur toy, green, missing one leg. The mother had mentioned Eli carried a toy when he hiked, a lucky raptor. I knelt, brushed dirt from it, logged time and coordinates. No footprints, no drag marks, nothing else. Just that single, deliberate placement, as if it had been set there rather than dropped. We radioed the find. Command decided to suspend search at last light and resume with infrared drones at dawn. Standard safety. Shenandoah terrain turns treacherous after dark, but I offered to stay late for evidence preservation. Kerr stayed too. By 7:25 p.m. shadows had fully merged under the canopy. I logged final notes by flashlight, recorded barometric pressure, temperature, and wind direction for case file consistency. That's when Kerr asked, "You hear that?" I paused. There, a faint thud maybe 50 yards upslope, followed by a rustle like fabric brushing bark. We both froze, listening. Another thud, lighter this time. Could have been deer. Could have been. I switched off my light. The glow vanished, leaving the blue dusk grainy and depthless. I felt the air move, a brief cool draft against the sweat on my neck. Then silence again. Kerr drew his sidearm low, ready. We waited 30 seconds, a minute. Nothing. Finally, I keyed the mic. Command, we're hearing movement north slope, possible animal or subject. Request backup sweep before we clear out. Static. Then partial response garbled. Copy. Signal weak, hold position. The forest swallowed the rest. Kerr exhaled slow. Could be one of the volunteers lost track of time. Could, I said. But everyone was accounted for at base roll call minutes earlier. We advanced 10 yards upslope, scanning with low beams. Leaves whispered under our boots. A branch cracked somewhere to our left, sharp, deliberate. We swung lights toward it. Empty forest. Another sound followed, closer, the short exhale of breath, quick and high, then gone. My training told me to call out, make presence known. Prevent escalation if it's a human suspect. I raised my voice. Park Service! If you can hear me, identify yourself. No answer. Only the breeze shifting through Laurel and a distant engine hum from Skyline Drive. We waited again, then backed down toward the fire tower clearing. Kerr radioed another update, partial static. We agreed to pull out to command and log the report as unverified auditory contact. Standard phrasing for things that don't fit cleanly anywhere else. When we reached the perimeter tape, I glanced once more at the ridge above. In the fading light, the tree line formed silhouettes that almost looked like figures, arms narrow, heads too long. But I knew better. That's how exhaustion plays tricks. We hiked out in silence, arriving at base by 8:15 p.m. The mother saw the toy in Kerr's evidence bag and made a sound I can't put words to. I finished the day's log at 8:47 p.m., ending entry with subject not located. Further search to commence so 600. Evidence secured 1 fabric fragment, 1 toy dinosaur. Unverified movement on North Slope after 1900 hours. That night, I sat alone in my truck, windows down, the forest breathing cold through the vents. There are moments you feel the line between procedure and instinct blur. Tonight was one of them, because the woods felt full, not with life, but with something watching the search lights fade. Dawn came slow, the kind of pale wash that makes the ridgelines look brittle. I'd slept maybe an hour in the truck before the radio hissed me awake. Moisture beaded on the windshield, blurring the red lights of the incident command trailer. Every search starts the same: coffee too hot, air too cold, silence heavy with things people don't say out loud. At 05:30 we held the morning briefing. 43 personnel total, rangers, deputies, volunteers, 1 drone crew out of Charlottesville. I stood beside the map board as our operations lead. Ranger Lissamore marked overnight coordinates with blue grease pencil. Evidence cluster North Ridge, fire tower site, she said. Today we grid south to the river, re-sweep ridge sector. Her voice stayed professional, but you could hear fatigue fray the edges. The parents arrived again, faces hollowed by the kind of night no parent should live through. The father insisted on joining a line team. Protocol forbade it. He argued until his voice broke. I told him quietly that letting professionals work gave Eli his best chance. That's the cruel part. We make promises we can't guarantee. By 06:10, the first drone lifted, a faint buzz lost against bird chatter returning after yesterday's eerie stillness. I took my team of 5: Kerr, Dana, another ranger named Wexler, and 2 volunteers from the county fire department. We started from the fire tower base, GPS logging each marker from yesterday. Mist still pooled low, curling through the trees like breath. Procedure felt automatic: sweep, call name, pause. Eli, this is Ranger Matt. If you can hear me, make a sound. Wend answered, carrying the faint tang of wet iron from somewhere downslope. The forest smelled different after a night like that. Turned soil sap and something faintly metallic, probably runoff. At 07:20, the drone crew reported a thermal hit, small warm mass near the Rose River tributary, roughly 3/4 of a mile east of our position. Could have been an animal, but protocol required verification. We redirected east, descending a slope slick with dew. Every step hissed with wet leaves. The drone team radioed live feed coordinates. You should see it at your 12 o'clock, 30 yards. We broke through Laurel into a shallow gully and found nothing living, just a section of ground cleared of debris, roughly circular, maybe 6 feet wide. In the center, ashes still faintly warm, flecked with paper fragments and melted plastic. Not a wildfire, not old. Someone had built a fire here last night. I crouched, flicked my glove against a blackened scrap. The melted imprint of Raptor Claw's toy packaging warped across it. Kerr swore under his breath. He couldn't have built a fire? No, I said. He couldn't. We documented everything. Bagged samples, snapped photos. I called Command for Law Enforcement review. The order came back: clear treat as possible human interference, expand perimeter, watch for secondary evidence. The volunteers went pale. Wexler muttered something about the slope tracks from yesterday. The air felt tight again. Wind gone, insects gone. At 08:05, while we were packing evidence, Dana motioned me over. She stood by a maple trunk 10 yards off. The bark had faint scratches low, spaced like small fingers dragging upward. 5 marks uneven. A faint red smear. Probably clay, maybe blood. We swabbed, photographed, marked it. I kept thinking how fast a missing person case can turn from search to crime scene without anyone saying the words. By mid-morning, the sun burned through mist. The temperature climbed fast, sweat soaked my collar. The woods lightened but felt no less close. Kerr moved ahead to scout the drainage curve. Radio crackled every few minutes. Volunteers checking status, drone battery updates, all routine noise meant to hide the dread. Then Kerr's voice snapped through Matt. "I've got fresh prints here. Small north edge of the creek." We hustled over. Sure enough, 2 barefoot impressions in soft silt, heel to toe, about 7 inches long. Child-sized recent toes still sharp. Between them, a deeper adult boot mark heading opposite direction. That was enough to pull in forensics. We flagged the site, GPS logged, and stood back. The creek gurgled shallowly beside us, sunlight fracturing across water like broken glass. Something about the scene felt organized, as if whoever walked there wanted the prints to be found. Command ordered containment. We set a temporary perimeter and waited for the evidence team hiking up from Skyline. Waiting is the worst part. You start hearing things that aren't there. The wind shifted, carrying distant voices from the volunteer lines. Eli's name echoing over and over till it sounded like an incantation. Kerr leaned against a tree, jaw tight. 12 years on duty, he said quietly. This one feels off. Because it's a kid? I said. Because it's too clean. He wasn't wrong. No drag signs, no random scatter. Every clue neatly discoverable. At 10:00, the forensic techs arrived, sealed off the creek. We were reassigned to sweep the adjacent ridge for any sign of camp or observation point. That's where the pattern finally widened. 200 yards above the creek, we found a small overlook, a natural ledge with view straight down to the search area. Someone had cleared brush there recently. Flattened ferns, cigarette butts, an old soda bottle, fresh boot prints, same tread as yesterday's overlapping one. Whoever they were, they'd been watching. I called it in, voice steady though my pulse spiked. Command logged, potential observer site. Deputies began preparing warrant requests for nearby private parcels outside park boundary. At 11:12, we heard shouting from the lower ridge volunteer line calling for medics. We ran. When we reached them, they stood over a shallow depression behind a fallen tree. Inside lay a small pile of belongings, one child's sock, blue with cartoon sharks, a half-empty juice box, and a map torn from the visitor brochure. Someone had circled the words, Dark Hollow Falls Trail. That trail lay 3 miles north. Moore's voice came over radio sharp as wire. All units, redeploy north sector. Assume mobile suspect. Proceed with caution. We packed and moved fast. Every ranger knows the clock bleeds hope minute by minute. The hike to Dark Hollow was brutal in heat, sun glaring through canopy. Cicadas starting their mechanical wail. The volunteers lagged. I pushed ahead with care. The fall's roar grew faintly audible, a hollow murmur in the distance. Halfway there, county deputy hailed us. "We've got a campsite, 1/4 mile off trail." We converged. The clearing sat under a stand of poplar, barely visible from main path. A small blue tarp strung between trunks, ground littered with food wrappers and cheap beer cans. No child, but plenty of signs someone had stayed recently. Charcoal still dusty, sleeping bag imprint, cigarette pack crushed flat. What froze me was a faded park brochure pinned to the tarp with a pocket knife. On it, someone had scribbled, "Keep looking down." We bagged it, photographed everything. Kerr found tire ruts leading to an old service road, likely ATV or dirt bike. The pattern cut east toward the boundary fence. Command requested we hold position until tactical unit could secure. That's procedure when abduction potential crosses threshold, local police take lead. But they were still 40 minutes out. 40 minutes feels endless in the woods. I radioed for drone recon eastward. Feed came back 10 minutes later. Thermal anomalies along fence line, 2 heat signatures stationary, 1 prone. Could be nothing, the pilot said. Could be animals. Or not. Kerr muttered. We moved, keeping low. The air thickened with humidity, thunderheads brewing far south. Every sound felt amplified. Our own breathing fabric rustle. The buzz of deer flies. As we neared the fence, the signal from base flickered. terrain blocking line of sight. I told Kerr to maintain visual while I scouted left flank. The ground dipped into a shallow ditch filled with ferns. I pushed through and nearly stumbled over a pile of trash bags. When I slit one open with my multitool, only old food waste and cans spilled out. But beneath them lay a child's blue rain boot, clean, dry, size appropriate for Eli. My throat tightened. I bagged it, photographed, logged coordinates, then called softly, "Care, you're gonna want to see this." No reply. Static hissed in my earpiece. I tried again. Nothing. I climbed back toward the fence line, heartbeat pounding too loud in my ears. The thunder muttered closer. Then a shout, faint, one word. "Here!" I followed the sound, pushing through underbrush until I saw him. Kerr stood 10 yards ahead, weapon drawn, pointing at something beyond the fence. On the far side, maybe 20 feet into private property, a man stood motionless. Mid-30s, tan jacket, ball cap pulled low. His hands were empty, palms out. "Stay where you are," Kerr ordered. "Identify yourself." The man didn't move. I circled wide to get clear view. His face came into focus, weathered, gaunt eyes flat. Behind him, an ATV rested half hidden by brush. "Did you see a child?" I called. A boy, 7 years old. Red hoodie. He shook his head once slow. "Then why are you inside a restricted boundary?" Kerr snapped. The man pointed toward the valley. "You're looking the wrong way." His voice carried, strangely calm, almost pitying. Then he turned, climbed onto the ATV, and gunned it downslope before we could cross. We vaulted the fence seconds later, but he'd vanished into trees. No license plate, no trail beyond churned mud. Command finally re-established contact. I relayed full incident, requested roadblock at Route 211 exit. By 1300, clouds broke open, heavy rain pounding the forest flat. The search halted temporarily for safety. Kerr and I sheltered under the tarp remains, water hammering overhead. He stared at the spot where the man had stood. "You think he's our guy?" "I think he wanted us to think that," I said. We waited out the storm, every thunderclap rolling through our ribs. When it eased, we hiked back toward base, soaked boots squelching. The creek crossing had swelled knee-deep, the path a slick ribbon of mud. Halfway back, Dana's voice cut through radio static. "We found something near the overlook. Come quick." We timed it, lungs burning. At the overlook where it all began, the search line gathered in uneasy silence. On the guardrail hung a child's red hoodie, dripping rainwater, tied neatly in a single knot around the post. No blood, no tears, no sign of struggle. Just that knot. Someone had returned it while we were miles away. Rain makes everything heavier. The air, the light, even the silence. When we reached the overlook, the red hoodie was still dripping against the guardrail, knot tight, threads dark with water. I stood there watching it sway while Kerr called for evidence techs. His voice sounded smaller than usual, the kind people use when they're afraid of breaking something fragile. No one wanted to touch it until photography was done. A single raindrop hit the hood's edge, rolled off, and vanished into the gravel below. The mother was inside a tent back at command, and I prayed she wouldn't see this yet. More arrived, her uniform soaked through, clipboard sealed in a plastic bag. "When's the last time anyone swept this area?" "Yesterday afternoon," I said. "After that, secured perimeter until morning. And nobody logged return access." "Correct." She looked at the hoodie, lips tightening. Then someone came through our own containment line. That realization rippled through the team like static. We photographed the hoodie in situ, cut it free, sealed it. Forensics swabbed the knot and collected fibers. No obvious fingerprints, rain had washed most away. The rope was just a shoelace frayed at one end. Command decided to lock down the overlook as active crime scene. Volunteers were dismissed, replaced by deputies and 2 FBI field agents from Charlottesville called in under emergency child abduction protocol. Their arrival shifted the whole mood. Fewer voices, more radios, everything methodical. At 1500, I was debriefed in the command trailer. The agents introduced themselves as Agent Cross and Agent Dyer, both polite, both stone-faced. Cross led questioning while Dyer typed notes. "You first responded yesterday," Cross said. "Found the toy and fabric. Any visual contact since?" "None," I said. "Heard movement last night, but no confirmation." You mentioned an adult male near boundary fence. Yes, mid-30s, tan jacket, dark cap, driving ATV. Any identifying features? Thin, maybe 6 feet, brown beard, voice calm. Said we were looking the wrong way. Cross exchanged a look with Dyer. Did you pursue? Attempted. He fled downslope. Likely private property beyond park limit. They logged every word, each keystroke sounding too loud against the storm drumming outside. Finally, Cross said, "Stay attached to command. You're familiar with terrain. We'll coordinate through you." When I stepped back into the rain, the air had cooled, the scent of wet bark and ozone sharp enough to taste. The forest steamed faintly. Kerr leaned against a truck bed, drinking from a paper cup. "They think it's a local," he said. "Could be." He stared at the tree line. "Or someone who knows how we work." By 1610, they deployed drones again, infrared scanning in widening spirals from the overlook. I joined ground search checking slope trails for footprints washed out by rain. The mud glistened slick, reflecting broken sky. About 30 minutes in, Wexler radioed, found recent tire tracks on Fire Road. Same pattern as ATV, heading north, command approved pursuit. Kerr and I followed, GPS logging every 50 yards. The tracks cut deep, curving through a saddle valley, then ended abruptly at a patch of bare rock. No exit path visible. He loaded it onto a trailer. Car set. Or covered it. I scanned the ground. Pebbles were disturbed in a straight drag line toward the tree line, suggesting something heavy rolled over them. We marked the coordinates, called it in. Then, from behind, a faint whistle carried on the wind. 3 short bursts, pause, 1 long. Standard field whistle code for need assistance. We turned back, radios up. "This is Hale. Who's signaling?" No response. The whistle came again, farther downslope. Kerr frowned. "That's not our pattern. Nobody's cleared to be that direction." We followed anyway. That's what experience does. You stop thinking and move toward trouble before fear can vote. The forest grew darker as clouds thickened again. Water still dripped from these like tiny clocks. My boots squelched in mud, uniform sticking to my back. The whistle repeated, but the spacing was wrong this time. Slower, as if mimicking the first sequence. We broke through a stand of rhododendron into a narrow hollow. The sound stopped. Only the wind left. I called out, "Search and rescue! Identify yourself!" Nothing. Kerr exhaled through his nose. Somebody's screwing with us, maybe. But the mud near our feet told another story. Boot prints, overlapping, fresh. The same treat as the fence line suspect. We followed them another 30 yards until they stopped at a large poplar tree. There, nailed into the bark at eye level, was a laminated photograph. Water droplets still clinging to it. The picture showed the overlook, taken from somewhere above, timestamp 1342 today. In the frame, 3 figures stood around the red hoodie Kerr, me and Dana. Someone had been watching from the ridge. Kerr swore softly. "Jesus." I tore it down, sealed it in an evidence bag. We're pulling back. Now, back at command, the agents examined the photo. Cross didn't say anything for a while. Dyer compared the timestamp to our drone logs. "We had no aerial in that sector until 1350, he said quietly. "Meaning whoever took this had vantage access before we arrived," Cross said, "and proximity close enough to hear radio chatter. They ordered a full comm sweep. Frequencies rotated, channels encrypted. I watched their efficiency with mixed relief and unease. It meant we were no longer a search. It was a hunt now. By 1730, dusk crawled back early behind the storm front. Command lights flickered on, generators humming. Volunteers were kept at base for safety. Only trained units deployed. I refilled my thermos, rubbed mud from my sleeves, tried not to think about the photo. Cross called me aside near the perimeter tape. "You know these trails better than anyone," she said. "If he's using high ground to monitor us, where would he go next?" I studied the topographic map pinned to her clipboard. South Ridge has clear line, of sight to both overlook and access road. Old fire cut runs along it, easy to traverse unseen. "Show us." We drove partway, hiked the rest. The ridge felt strangely open, wind tearing through, trees bent westward. Visibility stretched across miles of rolling green fading blue with distance. Beautiful in any other context. Halfway up, Kerr pointed. There, atop a small rise, a camouflaged tarp blended into brush. Beneath it, a simple setup folding chair, thermos, crushed cigarette pack, and a small camera tripod. The camera itself was gone. I swept my flashlight over the ground. Impressions in soil. Someone had knelt recently. The thermos was still warm when I picked it up. "He's close," Kerr murmured. We held position until the agents arrived. They documented everything, sealed evidence, expanded perimeter again. That's when my radio crackled. Command reporting a vehicle sighting near Thornton Gap exit matching the ATV suspect's description. Units were already en route. We hiked back through the gloaming light, adrenaline draining. By 1910, base camp glowed under halogens. Deputies briefed us they'd located the ATV abandoned behind a rest area dumpster still warm. No driver, but wedged beneath the seat was a folded note inside a plastic sleeve. They handed it to Cross. She read silently, then passed it to me. "Stop looking for the boy. He's not lost. He's gone home." I stared at the handwriting. Blocky, deliberate, printed with a heavy pen. Rain had blurred the ink just enough to make it worse. Cross's expression didn't change. "We'll run analysis. Could be misdirection." Kerr shook his head. "Or confession." Agents coordinated roadblocks for 20 miles, but daylight's edge slipped fast. The woods beyond camp turned black by 2000, only distant thunder flickering silver on horizons. We stood near the trucks, watching lightning blink over the ridge. "He's playing with us," Kerr said quietly. "Feels that way. And the kid." I looked at the dark line of trees, either alive and hidden, or gone before we even started. He nodded once, then looked away. "Sometimes I hate this job." We stayed until 2200 while the FBI packed evidence and transported the parents to a nearby facility for protection. The mother didn't speak. She just stared at the child's toy still sealed in its bag. When most had cleared out, I sat again in my truck, same spot as last night. The forest loomed outside, dripping and endless. I logged my daily report, hands shaking slightly by the end. Subject not recovered. Investigation active. Evidence indicates external interference by unidentified male. All personnel accounted for. I left the engine off. Just listened. In the distance, one last whistle echoed. 3 short, 1 long. I told myself it was wind. Still, I wrote in the margin of my report. Possible imitation of SAR signal. Location undetermined. Recommend frequency isolation next operational period. The storm rolled north overnight. By morning, the ridge would steam again, washed clean. We'd go back out, redraw grids, start the same pattern all over. That's the job. But that night, sitting there with headlights off and the woods breathing heavy around me, I couldn't stop thinking about the phrase on the note. "He's gone home." Because Eli's family was from Richmond, and the man who'd said we were looking the wrong way had been standing in a spot facing east, away from the valley, toward Skyline Drive, toward home. Night makes a forest honest. Every shadow that looks alive in daylight flattens into black weight. When the official sweep began at 2300, the air had cooled to 52 degrees, mist thick enough to beat on rifle barrels and flashlights. The command post lights burned pale orange through the fog like lanterns underwater. Agent Cross briefed us beside her vehicle hood, map spread under a magnetic lamp. "We have reason to believe the suspect surveilled prior to abduction. Tonight's sweep will focus on access points, trail cams, and any cached gear. Maintain radio silence except check-ins. If you see him, don't pursue alone." Kerr and I drew the southern loop, 3 miles of service road cutting through oak pine mix. Our radios crackled every half hour with position codes, nothing else. Gravel under boots, breath frost, the constant pulse of cicadas that hadn't yet frozen out for autumn. The woods smelled of rain-soaked earth and gasoline from generators downhill. Somewhere behind us, a drone purred overhead, invisible but steady. Half a mile in, Kerr nudged me. "Look at this." Fresh boot prints again, same tread, same direction, heading toward the ridge camera posts we'd installed last spring. The rain should have erased yesterday's tracks, but these were crisp. We followed slowly, lights low. The prints wove off the road through undergrowth slick with dew. After 40 yards, a faint metallic glint caught my beam. A motion sensor dangling from its mounting strap, lens smashed clean. Trail cams dead, Kerr muttered. I checked the SD card slot going. Whoever had done it knew what to take. We radioed the find. Cross acknowledged. Voice calm. Document. Proceed east. We kept moving. The forest pressed tighter. Trees leaned over the path as though listening. My boots sank in mud that stank of iron. A raccoon scuttled off somewhere left, branches cracking loud in the hush. Then something flickered in my peripheral vision, white plastic against bark. Another photograph, nailed low this time, half hidden behind moss. I crouched. It showed yesterday's search line again, same angle as before but closer. The timestamp 1100 a.m. June 14th, 2 hours before Eli was reported missing. The image caught his parents at the overlook, mother holding the boy's shoulder, father turning for the camera, both smiling. Someone had photographed them before he disappeared. I bagged it, throat dry. Kerr whispered. That was planned. Looks that way. Cross ordered us to return with evidence. The walk back felt endless, fog thickening until the trees became gray pillars in milk. At base, the text clustered around the photo under floodlight. Dyer compared timestamps to the Morrison family's phone data. They'd posted a picture to social media at 1058. This was taken maybe 20 seconds apart from another angle. Whoever shot it had been standing just beyond frame. Cross straightened, voice level but hard. He was scouting them, not random. The parents were moved under protection to the county sheriff's office. I didn't see their faces again that night. By 01:10 a.m., the FBI requested expanded coordination with state police. Kerr and I volunteered to escort the techs retrieving other trail cams before dawn. That meant hiking back into the same drainage where we'd found the toy. The fog had thinned, stars peeked through in fragments. The ground steamed faintly, heat of yesterday still trapped below. We located the first camera post near a downed birch. Intact, the second one farther along was gone, strap cut, wires dangling. Instead, we found a piece of reflective tape wound around a branch like a marker. It wasn't ours. Kerr frowned. That's SAR, grade tape. Meaning, whoever left it had either stolen some from us, or once was one of us. We found 2 more bits farther ahead, each spaced evenly, forming a subtle line pointing north. Following them would have led straight to the overlook parking lot, a breadcrumb trail for someone who already knew the map. At 02:05 a.m., dispatch reported movement on the access road near Gate 3, infrared pickup of a single person walking east. All nearby teams froze positions. Kerr and I were less than a quarter mile out. Cross's order came through, hold visual. Do not engage. We crouched behind a fallen log, lights off. 10 minutes later, a dim silhouette appeared through mist. Tall, carrying something slung across shoulder. No weapon visible. He moved steadily, headlamp low, stopping every few yards to look back down trail, as if counting the trees. Through binoculars, I saw the shape clearer. Man, tan jacket, same build as fence-line suspect. He paused beneath a poplar, kneeled briefly, then rose and kept walking toward the overlook road. Command. Visual confirmed, I whispered. Units en route. Maintain contact. The man reached a bend where the path opened to moonlight. He looked up once, directly toward us. For half a heartbeat I thought he saw me. Then he raised his hand, not a wave, more like acknowledgement, and disappeared around the curve. Kerr mouthed, "What now? Stay." Engines started somewhere far below. Radios flared as tactical units converged on the road. 2 minutes later, headlights flashed through trees, shouts echoing. Then 3 gunshots cracked the air. Static filled the comm line. Someone shouted, "Suspect down. Check perimeter." We ran, mud-sucking at our boots. When we reached the clearing, red strobes painted everything unreal. Deputies surrounded a figure sprawled beside the guardrail. The tan jacket, the cap. His chest rose shallowly, blood pooled under his shoulder. Medics worked fast, but his pulse faded within minutes. Cross crouched beside him, eyes unreadable. ID. Dare searched the pockets. Wallet, driver's license, small folding knife, keys. Name's Paul Marin. Local address Luray. Former volunteer ranger. Record shows seasonal service 5 years ago. That explained the tape. They loaded him onto a stretcher. I stood there watching rain start again, light and cold. Cross turned to me. "You ever work with him?" I shook my head. "Before my time." Then he knew this park better than most. The investigation shifted from search to recovery in a single breath. Forensics swept the scene, tagging every casing, photographing the road. A backpack lay nearby, partly unzipped. Inside a camera, 3 SD cards, a pair of child-sized socks folded neat. One card held footage timestamped over the past 2 days, angles from ridges, drone, level shots likely from a consumer quadcopter, all aimed toward the search teams. No footage of the boy himself, not yet. Cross looked exhausted but composed. We'll process everything. For now, rest, but none of us left. At 03:45 a.m. power in camp flickered. Generators strained against wet fuel. I sat under the canopy, helmet in my lap, staring at the ridgeline now hidden by fog again. The forest looked empty yet full. Kerr came by with 2 cups of burned coffee. "They think it's over," he said. "It's never over until the kid's home." He nodded. "You notice the prints back there? Marin's boots didn't match the ones at the creek. Different sole pattern." I looked up. "You sure?" "Positive. He had Vibram raptors. Those at the creek were older red wings. That landed like a stone. Then we still have another player." "Yeah." He took a slow sip. "Somebody else out there watching him." Neither of us said what we both thought. That the missing trail cam cards, the perfect placement of clues, even the note might have been orchestrated to point straight at Marin. By 0500 a.m., dawn began to gray the horizon. Fog thinned into ribbons sliding through hollows. Search teams prepped to resume grid, though no one believed Ellie was alive anymore. When I walked the overlook once more, dew shimmered on the rail where the hoodie had hung. The forest below was calm, almost tender. If you didn't know better, you'd think it had never held fear at all. Cross joined me, arms folded. "We'll release preliminary statement at noon," she said. "Public will hear suspect deceased, child still unaccounted. You'll be credited for ground leadership." "That doesn't feel like anything." She nodded. "It rarely does." A radio cracked behind us. Tech unit from headquarters reporting last data extraction from Marin's SD cards. One video file stood out, timestamped an hour before he was shot. Audio only, low whispering, Marin's voice saying, "He's not mine. He followed me." Then footsteps, and the recording ended. Cross exhaled through her nose. "That's it, then." But she didn't sound convinced. Neither was 0610. As sun burned off the fog, I logged the final entry for the night operation: primary suspect deceased, secondary unknown. Search to continue pending evidence confirmation. I added a note of my own, unofficial. If someone else was in those woods, they knew every move we'd make before we made it. I stood there a long time before heading back to base. The trees glowed gold in first light, birds starting up again like nothing had happened. Somewhere far down the slope, the Rose River murmured quietly through rock, steady, eternal. For all our maps and radios and chain of command, the forest had reminded us who owned the last word. By mid-morning the rain had burned off and left the park in that washed-out glare that hurts the eyes. Steam rose from the asphalt, turning the command post into a slow-moving cloud of damp uniforms and generator fumes. Someone was frying eggs in a camp pan near the trucks. Nobody ate them. I'd spent the last hour in debrief with Cross and Dyer, while evidence techs worked in the next tent. Every few minutes one of them would shout for a timestamp or cord sample. The air smelled of solvent and mud. Cross kept her tone steady. "Autopsy on Marin scheduled this afternoon in Harrisonburg. Preliminary search of his property shows camping gear, digital maps, multiple SD cards. No sign of the boy. Any proof he took him?" I asked. She rubbed her forehead. "Not yet. No photos of contact. No DNA. So we shot a man we only think, who pointed a firearm at officers." She cut me off clean, professional. The words sat between us like a stone outside. A drone buzzed low over the ridge, sweeping thermal again just in case. The sound faded into the distance, swallowed by cicadas. Kerr came in carrying a fresh printout from forensics. "You'll want to see this," he said. It was a still frame from Marin's final video. Time stamped 21:36, about 20 minutes before contact. The image showed Marin's flashlight beam on the ground, shaking, voice panting, "He's not mine." He followed me. He followed. The frame tilted, caught another light moving between trees behind him. Cold white, not flashlight yellow. Then static. Cross frowned. Could be another search unit. Except we'd already pulled all teams to perimeter by 2100. I said. The tent felt smaller. Dyer typed without looking up. Kerr cleared his throat. We need to confirm chain of custody on those tapes. If someone else out there knew where he was filming, maybe they planted half this crap. Cross folded the printout. Speculation doesn't help. Facts will. Still, she didn't throw it away. At 0945 we moved out again. Limited search, evidence recovery only. The official word was cleanup. The unofficial word was make sure we didn't miss anything that could embarrass the Bureau later. I went with Kerr and a single volunteer to recheck Marin's Ridge site. The climb felt endless. Every boot slip sounded too loud. The morning smelled of pine resin and wet stone. When we reached the spot, yellow tape fluttered like brittle flags. The mud still showed prints from last night's team, and the chair, the thermos, all tagged and gone. Only the tripod legs remained, folded and half buried. I started photographing residual impressions when Kerr called softly, Matt. He was standing near the edge of the slope, staring at the ground. I joined him. There, impressed in the soft clay, were two sets of prints, one booted, likely Marin's, but beside them, faint and smaller, barefoot again. Same pattern as the creek prints. They led to the edge, stopped clean where the slope dropped off 20 feet to the valley floor. I crouched, tracing one toe mark. These are newer than the others. After the rain, Kerr said, after he was already dead. We flagged the site, radioed command. Cross's voice came back clipped, document, secure. Do not speculate over open channel. But the volunteers heard it too, and whispers started quick. Maybe the kid's alive, maybe someone moved him, maybe we've been chasing ghosts. We finished our grid in silence. At 11:30, back at base, I found Cross and Dyer over a laptop. Grainy stills flickered across the screen. Footage from a traffic camera near the park entrance around the time of disappearance. A silver SUV had entered at 10:41 a.m., left again at 11:53. Partial plate match to Marin's, but not exact. Rental car, Deer said, picked up yesterday morning under a fake ID. We traced the credit card, prepaid, bought in Richmond last week. That's the Morrisons' hometown, I said. Cross nodded slowly, which means someone knew they were coming. She tapped the laptop. Marin couldn't plan that. He'd been living out of a trailer with no phone. The idea sat heavy. Planned. Local knowledge, access to SAR gear. Whoever orchestrated this might have used Marin as cover. By noon, media trucks lined the lower road. Reporters shouted questions at the sheriff's press conference. Was the child alive? Why was deadly force used? Their voices echoed up the valley, thin and unreal. I avoided the cameras, took refuge near the vehicles where nobody wanted to talk. Kerr joined me, chewing an unlit cigarette. You ever notice how quick people build stories? He said. Before the facts even settle. Always. Wes, we do the same thing in uniform. He was right. The difference was ours could bury the truth if it made everyone feel safer. At 13:05, forensic tech Harper returned from lab with preliminary DNA results. Nothing from Marin matched the boy. Nothing on the hoodie, the toy, or the note tied him there. Cross listened without expression. So we're back to zero. Not quite, Harper said. We did find a partial latent on the toy dinosaur. Adult male, not in any federal or state database. Kerr leaned forward, meaning either clean or never caught. Harper nodded. Print quality's high enough to cross, match if we find a candidate. Cross ordered every former seasonal ranger fingerprint record pulled from archives. By mid-afternoon, I felt the kind of exhaustion that doesn't belong to muscles. The kind that settles in behind the eyes. The sun pressed down hot again, baking the mud into cracked plates. I walked the overlook alone, needed the quiet. The view stretched forever, green ridges rippling to horizon. For the first time since the call came in, I let myself think of Eli not as the subject, but as a boy, red hoodie, small hand, dinosaur toy, 7 years old. Somewhere below, a Hawk Road thermals turning lazy circles. The park looked so normal it felt like mockery. At 15:40, Cross called all senior rangers to briefing. The FBI lab had extracted data from Marin's GPS watch. The coordinates logged every half hour for the past 2 weeks. and one entry stopped me cold. June 13, 1920 hours Visitor Center, Skyline Drive in Puyallup, ping recorded. Employee, I asked. He didn't work here anymore. Cross scrolled further. He met someone who did. The watch GPS had paired briefly via Bluetooth to another device, listed as SRU Unit 7. That prefix belonged to Search and Rescue Unit radios issued last month. Only 10 existed. Mine was Unit 6. Unit 7 belonged to Ranger Wexler. The room went still. Cross said nothing at first then. Where is he? Kurt checked his roster sheet. Outreach checking the Rose River drain alone. Cross grabbed her radio. All units, locate Wexler immediately. Maintain visual. Do not confront until confirmation. I was already moving before she finished. The trail back to Rose River felt different now. Too bright, too loud. The kind of afternoon when cicadas drown every thought. Gravel slid under my boots. Halfway down, I spotted his truck pulled onto the shoulder. Door open, engine idling. No one inside. His pack sat on the passenger seat, radio still clipped to the strap. I took it, K'd the mic. Wexler, this is Hale. You copy. Static. Downhill, the creek shimmered through trees. I followed its sound, calling again, voice echoing against rock. 100 yards in, movement flashed. Tan uniform through foliage. Wexler stood knee-deep in water, staring at something caught between stones. Wex, I shouted. He turned slowly, eyes unfocused, face pale. It's not him, he said. I stepped closer. In the water lay a backpack, small blue, cartoon shark patch on the pocket. Inside, snacks, a flashlight, and a folded sheet of paper sealed in a plastic bag. The note read, stop searching for what you already found. The handwriting was the same as the earlier message. I looked at Wexler. Where did you get this? It floated down, he whispered. I was checking the debris traps. It just came. Anyone else here? He shook his head. His boots trembled against current. We bagged the backpack, logged coordinates, called it in. Cross's voice came tight. Secure Wexler. Return immediately. He didn't resist, just kept repeating. It's not him. Back at base, Dyer compared the pack to the photos from the Morrisons. Identical. DNA swab from the straps came back within the hour. Partial match to Eli, high probability of contact less than 40, 8 hours old. Which meant he'd been alive after the first night. Cross paced the tent, whispering to someone on her phone, every sentence clipped. No, I don't think Marin acted alone. Yes, we have internal involvement. No, we don't have the boy. When she hung up, she looked at me. Wexler's under suspension until interrogation. You'll take over the field logs. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere, on the phrase what you already found. We'd found the toy, the hoodie, the sock, the note. Pieces, but nothing living. If someone staged those, maybe the boy had been gone from the start, and we were walking through a play built for our benefit. At 1820, sun dropped behind the ridge, shadows long and soft. Cross ordered the area closed to all civilians until further notice. Helicopters would resume at dawn. I sat on the hood of my truck, watching fog creep up again from the hollows. Kerr joined me. Silent for a while. Finally he said, you think Wexler's dirty. I think somebody used him. Maybe without him even knowing. He grunted. Then who's left to trust? Good question. The forest didn't answer. When full dark came, the generators flickered on again, and command lights painted the trees an unnatural amber. I could still hear the creek in the distance, faint but steady. I opened my logbook, wrote the day's close-out entry, subject status unknown, secondary suspect deceased, internal irregularities under review, continue evidence recovery. Then below that, I added one line the paperwork would never keep. The woods feel different tonight, as if they're waiting for us to stop pretending we're the ones in control. The night never really ended. It just thinned into a colorless gray. By 0500 the camp generators coughed to life again, and the smell of diesel drifted through mist that hung barely a foot off the ground. Everyone looked a decade older. Wet uniforms, paper cups, silence. The kind of dawn where no one wants to meet anyone's eyes. I was at the folding table outside the command trailer, trying to line up the previous day's field logs. Half the handwriting was mine, half belonged to rangers who'd already rotated home. Columns of times, coordinates, signatures, all supposed to match the GPS pings on our radios. They didn't. At 14:10 yesterday, my log said I'd been with Kerr near the creek. The radio metadata showed my unit pinged 2 miles west at the same minute. I thought maybe a glitch, so I checked Wexler's. Same error, different direction. His signal jumped back and forth every few hours like he was teleporting through the park. When I showed Cross, she didn't look surprised. "You're not the first to notice," she said. "Our central database shows these inconsistencies going back weeks, before Eli even went missing." I stared at her. Then somebody spoofed the radio IDs, or cloned them. Dyer joined us, laptop under his arm. Every SAR unit uses an encrypted serial, but the encryption key hasn't been rotated since last fall. Anyone with a copy could generate fake positions. Cross folded her arms. "We've been chasing ghosts." She told us the Bureau's cyber team was en route. Until then, all GPS data would be treated as unreliable. Only physical signatures counted. Kerr came up behind me, reading the printouts. "So, our own system's been feeding us breadcrumbs. Looks that way." He exhaled hard through his nose. "Christ, we might as well have been searching blind." We spent the next 2 hours doing manual reconciliation, plotting each visual sighting, every flag marker, by memory. The map started to look less like a grid and more like a spiral, everything circling back toward the same quadrant of forest. The same hollow where the first toy had been found, at 0720. Cross ordered a final sweep before turning the site over to forensic recovery. No drones, no digital tracking, just boots, eyes, tape. She assigned me and Kerr to lead one of 3 teams. The woods felt strangely still again. Morning light filtered through fog like smoke. Each step landed soft, damp, sound swallowed whole. Halfway down the slope I stopped. "Do you hear anything?" Kerr tilted his head. "Nothing." That was the point. Even birds had gone quiet. We reached the dry creek bed by 08:10. The orange flag I'd left 2 days earlier still clung to its stick, fluttering weakly. The mud had hardened around old prints. But farther along the bank, something new gleamed. Metal, I crouched. It was a trail camera, identical to park issue, half-buried, lens cracked. I pried it out and brushed off mud. The SD slot was empty, but the serial number made my stomach drop. SRO's Wengslers. "Frost needs to see this," I said. When we radioed, her voice came sharp through static. "Bag it and get clear. You've got company." "Ooh, Sheriff's Office. They're moving to secure all remaining park equipment until jurisdiction's sorted. Stay where you are." We waited. Within minutes, 2 deputies appeared through trees, one carrying a clipboard. Their expressions carried that weary authority of small, town cops forced into federal messes. Orders are to collect every piece of park tech. The lead said, "Chain of custody transfer." I handed the camera over, signed their form. Kerr kept quiet until they'd gone, then muttered, "Feels like we're being erased." "Just procedure," I said, though it didn't sound like me. Back at camp, Cross was pacing outside her vehicle, phone to ear. She waved me over. "The Bureau wants our raw footage for immediate review." But she hesitated. "One of the SD cards from Marin's camera won't decrypt. Different key. Not Bureau standard, not Park Service either. Meaning someone in another agency, maybe a contractor, supplied it. Government parks are full of overlapping jurisdictions. Wildlife, forestry, even military research leases nobody reads the fine print on. Still, hearing her say it out loud made the ground shift. I followed her into the trailer. The monitor showed freeze frames from the corrupted card. Random bursts of image before the file crashed treetops. Sunlight glare, a partial face blurred by motion. A ranger uniform sleeve, patch visible. The patch was mine. I stared at it. "That's not possible." Dyer checked the metadata. Timestamp puts it 40 minutes before your official arrival on site. Someone cloned my feed. Cross didn't look at me. Or someone wanted it to look like you. For a second I felt the air go thin. Every decision since day one, each search order, each evidence call, had passed through my hands. If the logs were false, my name signed them into truth. "Get some air," Cross said softly. Outside, the sky had turned brilliant blue, the kind that feels wrong after tragedy. Reporters shouted questions down by the access road. I walked the perimeter alone until I reached the overlook again. Same rail, same drop, but the valley below shimmered calm as glass. I remembered the first night, how I thought the forest was listening. Maybe it wasn't the forest. Maybe it was us, recorded, watched, pushed where someone wanted. At 145, Kerr called from camp. You'd better come back. They found something in the data cache. When I returned, Dyer was pointing at a new folder that had appeared on the decrypted drive. Auto-generated logs labeled Ranger Network Maintenance. Inside, hundreds of location points, each tagged with Ranger badge numbers. The earliest dated 3 months ago. The most recent ended exactly at the minute Illy vanished. Cross traced a finger down the screen. Whoever built this was logging Ranger movement long before the incident. Marin, Wexler, you, me, everyone. Why? Kara asked. Training data? Surveillance? I don't know. Then Dyer zoomed the map. All the points spiraled again toward the same hollow. At the center, a single coordinate highlighted in red. He read it out loud, 37563N. 78.345W. Cross-check the topo. That's an old ranger station, decommissioned in '92. Access road washed out years ago. She looked at me. You and Kerr are closest. Take a look. We hiked out by noon, the heat climbing again. The road had indeed eroded into a trench of stones and roots. Ferns choked what used to be tire ruts. A mile in, the shape of a cabin appeared through trees. Tin roof sagging, porch half gone. The door hung open. Inside, dust floated like ash. A table, 2 chairs, a radio base long dead. Against the far wall, shelves stacked with paper files, the smell of mildew and old oil. Kerr found a box labeled SAR Training Logs 1992-1995. Inside were sign-in sheets, checklist, even a few black and white photos of rangers in faded uniforms. One name repeated down every page, Paul Marin. So he'd trained here years before. Under the papers sat a sealed envelope, plastic yellowed. The front read simply, "To whoever keeps looking." I opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid, the same overlook, decades younger, guardrail freshly painted. In the photo, 2 men and a child stood smiling at the camera. The boy couldn't have been more than 7. On the back someone had written, "Don't let them teach this again." No date, no names. Kerr stared at it. That's the same spot, same age as Eli now. The implications stacked themselves quietly, one atop another. Training scenario, reenactment. Someone testing response systems with real people instead of drills. We carried everything back to camp. Cross met us halfway, dust rising around her boots. She read the note, said nothing for a long time. Then, none of this leaves Shenandoah until we confirm authenticity. Understood, I nodded. At 1400, she radioed higher command for an extraction of all electronic data. We were to stand down pending review. Just like that, the search, the mission that had filled every second of our lives for 3 days, was over. Paperwork replaced urgency. Deputies packed evidence crates. Volunteers drove home. The park went quiet again, normal on the surface. By evening, I was the last ranger still on site. Kerr had gone to shower. Cross was locked in her SUV on another call. The generator sputtered its steady heartbeat. I sat on the tailgate of my truck, Polaroid in hand. The faces blurred softly in the failing light. Maybe it meant nothing. A coincidence, an old family photo Marin had kept, or maybe he'd been replaying a story written before any of us arrived. When I closed my eyes, I heard water moving in the creek below, same rhythm as that first night. For the first time in days, I felt tired enough to sleep but too afraid to try, because I knew tomorrow would bring headlines that said suspect dead, case closed, and the public would accept it. But somewhere under those woods lay a pattern carved decades deep, a training gone wrong or something worse, and we'd walked it step by step, exactly as someone planned. I tore a page from my notebook and wrote June 17, end of operation report, chilled unrecovered, investigation pending. Evidence indicates long-term internal manipulation of search systems. If anyone reads this later, start where the logs overlap. Start where sound disappears. I folded it, slid it inside the Polaroid sleeve, and left both in the glove box. The sky over the ridge was turning red again, same as the first day. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. Morning came dry and hollow, no fog, no wind, just sunlight too clean for what it was falling on. The command post had already been half taken down by the time I walked out from my truck. Folding tables stacked, maps rolled, radios crated. Only the hum of a single generator remained, low and steady, like a heartbeat you forget you're listening to. Cross was outside the trailer, jacket off, coffee in hand. She looked smaller without the badge visible, like a civilian briefly borrowing authority. "You're still here," she said. "Couldn't sleep." "None of us did." She handed me a sealed envelope. "Official closure statement. You'll need to sign off as field lead." The words were plain black on government letterhead. Search concluded. Evidence indicates abduction by deceased subject. Case referred to FBI crimes against children for final disposition. That was it. No mention of falsified logs. No mention of internal cloning or the envelope we'd found at the old station. Neat, efficient, untrue.
Doesn't say much,
I said. It says what people can live with. I signed anyway. That's the part they don't teach you in Ranger School. That truth and closure rarely overlap. By mid-morning, the remaining vehicles pulled out one by one, wheels crackling over gravel. The parents had been taken home hours earlier under bureau escort. No press conference, no questions. The park was officially open again by noon. Kerr was the last to load up. He stopped beside my truck window, tapped the door with his knuckle. "You sticking around?" "Just one more sweep." "Habit." He nodded, looked like he wanted to say more, didn't, then drove off toward Skyline Drive. The road dust settled slow behind him. When the sound faded, I realized I could finally hear birds again. The first warbler song in days, sharp and clean. The park pretending nothing had happened. I locked my radio in the glove box, left the truck, and walked the trail alone. Same road as that first morning. Down through Oak, then Laurel, toward the overlook where it had begun. The path was dry now. No flags, no tape, just leaves starting to curl into early summer brown. At the overlook, the guardrail gleamed new. Someone had polished the rust stains. Below, the valley shimmered. For a long time I just stood there, hands on the metal, feeling the heat bleed into my palms. That's when I noticed it. At the base of the rail, wedged between posts, was a small piece of red fabric, so faded it was almost pink. I knelt, pulled it free. A scrap from the hoodie, probably missed by evidence crews. But underneath it, tucked into the crevice, was something else, a folded sheet of lined paper, dry despite last night's dew. "Stop searching for what you already found." Same handwriting as the others. The same steady, almost formal print. My pulse kicked once hard. I looked around, nothing, just trees, windless. I opened my notebook and compared the letters to Marin's from the first note. Not a match. Too neat. Too deliberate. Someone had kept writing long after Marin was gone. There are moments when your mind starts rewriting events backward. The sound in the dark that wasn't an animal. The misplaced footprints. The trail camera serial that matched Wexler's but couldn't have been his. None of it random, none of it proof. I should have turned the paper in. Instead, I folded it carefully, slipped it into my pocket, and kept walking. The trail dipped toward the creek where we'd found the toy. The water level had dropped again, sunlight glinting off stones. For the first time I saw it clearly, the way the current curved around the bank. It wasn't natural erosion. Someone had stacked small rocks there, forming a crude arrow pointing downstream. I followed it another 50 yards. At the bend caught between roots was a child's shoe, blue, sharp pattern, the other half of the pair from Marin's bag. Clean, dry, placed. Not drop. I stood there a long time. The shoe couldn't have survived the last storm intact, not without being moved afterward, meaning someone had come back. I bagged it, marked coordinates out of habit, even though the search was officially closed. Then I hiked back toward the truck, the forest whispering its usual midday sounds. Cross was gone when I returned. Only the empty generator hum and a single evidence crate left by the trailer. On top, someone had taped a note for me in her handwriting. "Thank you for your service. Don't call this one failure." I stared at it, then at the line of trees beyond. It's funny how fast routine fills back in once the chaos stops. The park would open trails tomorrow. Hikers would pass the same overlook, stand where the hoodie once hung, take pictures, post them with captions about the beauty of Shenandoah. They wouldn't know a child had vanished 20 feet from that spot, or that his ranger never truly left. I drove out slowly, window down, letting the warm wind fill the cab. Past mile marker 42, where the asphalt dips, the road bends enough that you can see the ridge top through the trees. For a moment I thought I saw a flash of red between the trunks. Bright, clean red, the kind you can spot a mile away. I braked hard.
Looked again, nothing.
Just sunlight on leaves. Still, I wrote down the time, 12:47 p.m. Out of instinct. Back in town. The Bureau rented us a motel block for debrief. I showered for the first time in 2 days, sat on the bed, and turned the Polaroid over in my hands again. The boy in that decades-old picture had the same round face as Eli, same shape to the ears. The older man beside him could have been Marin, or someone who looked like him before years and guilt aged him hollow. There's a small stamped number on Polaroid film packs, tied to manufacturing year. I looked it up later. That batch was made in 1994, the year Marin stopped working for the park. Cross's words replayed, "He's not mine. He followed me. If you strip away superstition, what's left is pattern and opportunity." The same training scenario repeated 9 years apart, same age, same location. Could have been a coincidence. Could have been something darker. An old, lost child. Simulation meant for ranger trainees, revived by someone who'd forgotten where the line between drill and real ended. I wrote that theory in my final report draft, then deleted it before sending. Nobody wants that kind of truth on paper. The official investigation file arrived 3 weeks later. I opened it at my kitchen table under yellow light. Final conclusion: accidental death likely, remains unrecovered. Search terminated. They even used my signature from earlier as certification. I hadn't realized when I'd signed that envelope what they'd attach it to. I closed the file, sat in the dark until dawn. You tell yourself these cases fade with time, but they don't. They just quiet down until the next call-out reminds you how little the forest ever gives back. Every ranger keeps something from their worst search. A token, a scrap, a reminder of humility. I keep 2. The Polaroid stays in my desk drawer. The note, "Stop searching for what you already found," stays folded in my wallet. Sometimes I unfold it, just to make sure the words haven't changed. They never do. Last week, a new call came through the internal alert feed. Missing child, age 7, reported in Shenandoah's North District. Different name, same profile. Cross isn't with the Bureau anymore, but Kurt texted me one line before radio silence, "You seeing this?" I typed back, "Do they still have the old SAR radios?" No answer yet. If they do, then someone else will find themselves standing in fog soon, calling a name into quiet woods, wondering why their GPS shows them 2 miles from where they know they're standing. And maybe they'll find the same things we did. A scrap of red cloth, a toy, a footprint going the wrong way. Maybe they'll even see a ranger's silhouette on a ridge, waving them forward. If they do, I hope they remember to stop, because the truth is simple, and it's not mystical. It's bureaucracy and repetition and human blindness. Someone built a system years ago to teach us how to find the lost, and we never stopped running it. The drills kept playing long after the instructors left. Every few years the coordinates reset, and the park delivers another lesson. The only thing missing is the line where the exercise ends. I sometimes drive past the boundary gate on off days. The overlook looks the same. The sign still warns about loose footing. Down by the creek, the ferns have grown back over our flag stakes. But if you listen closely, really listen, you can hear the soft whistle of wind through hollow metal, 3 short, 1 long. The old search signal. No one's supposed to use it anymore. That's how I know someone still is,